Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM and I welcome program today. We continue our series of relationship. Today is session number 2, Cultivating Respect and Humility. Today, Vaish, a Bhakti Yogi and former monk. We've got 10 members on Zoom and I've got Kaylee helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Thank you for giving your time today and welcome back to another episode of Success Sadhana.
Thank you very much, JM. I'm really happy to be back here. And just a slight correction, today is about the importance of attention in developing relationships, which you're really going to like because it's something that you have control over and it makes all the difference in the world. But we should definitely do it in a humble mood. Thank you, everyone, for joining from various places on this fine autumnal-like day. And wherever you are, I hope all's going well. JM, may we just go into the program?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Let's take a look at the first slide. I want to make sure I'm on the right program. Very, very interesting. Okay. So today, show the first slide, please, Jan. Attention, yes, that's attention. So let's just come back to the Zoom room and we're going to do a little attention experiment. If you're up for it. I'm going to switch on to a live performance and there'll be a little background music. So just take a moment to sit up a little straighter than you were a second ago and close your eyes and come into a state of introspection. And just breathe. you that journey. And as this whole series is about relationships, and last week I mentioned some very basic concepts. The fact that we're individuals, the fact that we crave relationship, we don't like isolation. And the ancient wisdom literatures talk about our individuality as being real. It's not an illusion. So, what does it mean, the power of our attention in our relationships? JM, let's take a look at a couple of slides. And everyone be ready today so we can discuss this. Any thoughts you hear that I pass along? And it's going to be very simple concept, but I guarantee you it's profound and that will work immediately in your life regarding any relationship that you have in any sphere. So your attention is the key to your relationship. I use that word a lot, key. When you have a key, can open a certain lock or a particular lock, and the way we open our relationships is with our attention. So here's a formula, and that is the quality of the attention you give to others determines the quality of your relationships. I like this picture. Student appears to be attentive. I noticed it myself when I went back to school after having been a monk for 13 years and getting used to learning by sitting before teachers and listening very carefully. And when I went back into a university setting for a while, I actually startled people because they thought I was being too attentive. I didn't mean to. I was just trained that way. And I also noticed that the teacher was appreciative as I would sit in the front row and I would give full attention to whatever he or she was saying. And that doesn't happen that much. I noticed that in the classroom situation, people would come in and be busy looking at other things or not really giving very much attention or being nonchalant. And anecdotally, I can say, developed immediate rapport with many of the teachers that I had just because of one thing, paying attention to what they were saying. And this principle you can extend anywhere. That means that any situation you're in, you can adjust it if you want to develop a relationship with the person who's talking or someone who's there near you or someone who's in your life on a regular basis, just by increasing the quality of the attention that you give to others. And it's practically mathematical, a one-to-one relationship. The more you put into it, the more the person will notice or recognize the connection that you have. So let's just come back in the Zoom room for a second and discuss this principle. As I'd like to hear from you, if you've ever noticed that you may be talking to someone or you may be in a relationship with someone and maybe that you're not paying that much attention to them. Is it possible to have a friend or a spouse or somebody who's, and that attention, and if situations don't pay attention, something practical might experience every day?
I'm talking to my manager, and my manager gets a phone call from his manager. So then he doesn't pay attention to me, and I understand that.
So you're talking to your manager, and then the manager gets a call from
his manager.
Yeah.
and he decides, okay, nothing is more important in this world at this time than answering a call from my manager. And suddenly I disappear in
Yeah.
his eyes. I patiently wait because
How do you,
he has to answer.
how does it make you feel?
I totally understand because his job is in trouble if he's not answering that call. And he's getting the call only because it is high priority that needs to be interrupted no matter what.
Okay. But you definitely notice it, right? And you have to compartmentalize it and say, like, okay, this is for business. Person has to pay attention, right?
Yes.
Doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you, Raj. Shankari.
So when I was growing up, my mom would do everything for me, like make our hair, get her lunchbox ready, make her bag and everything. And I really didn't pay any attention to what she was doing. And when I started even going to a job and I would come back and I would ask her, get my dinner out. But I never ever asked her, did you have your dinner tonight? But now that when I'm mother of two kids, I realized that I took her service for granted for so many years. And today, just by paying attention to the fact that, yes, she's a mother, but she's a woman too, my relationship with her has deepened far. I mean, it's really gone too deep because now I see her as a woman. I see her as a mother who did so much for me. And now I really give attention to every single details that transpires between us. So yes, it definitely makes a lot of difference.
Oh, thank you very much, Shankari, for sharing that. I think we can all relate with mothers. They give everything to us, so much attention. Even as just womb, they're thinking about us. Then it can be 30 before we actually and say, wow, you really, that's definitely a case study in attention. Thank you. Any other thoughts? There's one from Teresa, right, JM?
Yeah. So Teresa just posted, working too much can divert your attention from your loved ones and create a distance between you.
Yes. In fact, I heard a story from my teacher once. And he said he knew somebody who worked so many hours that he had a child and the child grew up. And by the time the child was cognizant, he didn't recognize his father because he was there so little, only there when the child was sleeping, and then he had to leave before he'd wake up and so forth. And literally we can estrange ourselves from others by not being in their orbit and not being aware or being so far outside of their orbit that they're not aware of us. Yes, Rajesh.
Yes, I just wanted to share that when I called my cousin in India some time ago, after the call was getting over, her daughter, she just wanted to say hi to me, and her mother was like telling, no, he's busy, it's office time. But somehow or other, I used your thing, right, to give a little bit, right, be present. I know, it's late time for her, and I spoke to her. It was so amazing when you give so much attention. The little girl, she's like a fifth grader right now in India. And she's telling, when next time you're going to come, I'm going to planning what I'm going to cook for you. You like this thing. I mean, amount of attention she got in a focused manner. Now she's like, I'm just thinking how much deeply she appreciated that mom is not listening to me. Only you, mom, you listen to me. And then she's talking about reciprocating in that manner, like thinking about what to cook when I'll meet her next. I was thinking about that is of my little extra 10 minutes of talk. If we have that focus with maybe all surrounding, maybe this world become a better place to live.
That's such a profound story. It goes towards the principle that I'm mentioning here, which is that this is the root cause of the quality or determinant of the quality of our relationships is the quality of attention that we give. It's also interesting to notice what attention is. What is it anyway that we're giving? Who are we that we can look at something and then it comes alive to some degree, depending on the kind of motive we have at looking. And if you've ever had this experience where you have a beloved house plant and then somehow it gets disconnected from the watering system, either there was a mix-up in communication of who was going to water the plant, or the little tube that was going there to water the plant got disconnected, it got shaken off somehow, and you come home one day and you notice it, and you see your poor little plant is all shriveled up.
Gone.
And then you go and you get a little can full of water and you bring it over, you lovingly pour the nice water onto the plant, and maybe you come back a few hours later and it's come to life. It's now again become vibrant and healthy, and you feel some joy in your heart. Oh, my plant, I saved it. And there's a way that we have some power we don't even know we have. We take it for granted and we squander it. At least I'm experienced at squandering that. And what is it? Like water, when we point our attention lovingly at someone or out of respect for somebody else, then they can come alive. Just like Rajesh was mentioning, just a gesture that, yes, let me talk to her for 5 minutes. And then suddenly there's this relationship that's blooming. And there's a sense of, oh yeah, this person loves me, actually. He took 5 minutes out of his day to just talk to me. Yes, Manish.
I'll just share experience with my even 3 years daughter. I could see that now she, like sometime I play with her, now she really become frustrated whenever she see phone, she just throw it out. Like she makes sure that she throw phone to make sure that, okay. So I could see that even 3 years daughter can perceive that it's not that we need to be adult. Like she could perceive that I'm not giving attention, and she knows what is my attention taking, and because she doesn't know much about throw, and it may break my phone, but she doesn't care. She just takes and throw it to make her statement very profound that I need attention.
Such a nice, in fact, I did a video a few years ago. In fact, JM is the one who shot it in Washington Park, and it got over 1 million views. And it was just about a little story I had about my friend KB and how he has this habit of looking at his wristwatch. And I was talking to him and he looked at his wristwatch. Of course, it happened many times, but I said it as it happened one time in the video we made. Said I was talking about something important. He knew it was important. He was considering it important, but then he looked at his wristwatch and then my heart sank. It was only a fraction of a second. And I said, KB, you got to go somewhere else. And he goes, no, it's not that. It's not that. And I analyzed it later that he only broke that beam of attention coming from him as a conscious being. As we noticed when we introspected earlier, we have that power. And fraction of a second, what it felt to me like, it was broken. That beam was broken and it meant something. And if we consider how valuable it is when we point our attention and we keep it there on somebody when we're in the midst of relating to them in an important way, or even if we're somewhere else, we show acts of attention towards them by being responsive and so forth, then it makes all the difference in the world. When there's a gap in that, for instance, sometimes somebody will write an email and you write back immediately, and then they'll write again. And because you don't write back right away at the same cadence as you did before, then they think, they hate me now. I've had that happen many times. People say, what happened? I was like, what happened was I was out of town, or like it was a really busy time. I couldn't write back for a few days because I didn't have the wherewithal to do it right now. But even that is taken, that break in attention is taken very personally. So we can see how this is a high wire act, how we're using our attention, and it's high voltage also. We're high voltage, right? I mean, if you look right now at anybody right here, you just notice that as soon as you give their attention to them, or even give attention to yourself. You'll look at yourself in the little Zoom room, and all of a sudden you'll sit like, oh, I'm slouching. Attention brings everything to life, including ourselves. You look in the mirror, it's like, oh, I better get my act together. So it's a power we can easily forget. And in the ancient wisdom literature, this is generally under the category of, or under the general category of ignorance. We're unaware of our own power. We're unaware of who we are, what our nature is, and we don't even know what we're doing. We're shooting our attention in all these different directions, and it's having all these effects. And we're thinking, well, what's happening in my life? Why are people treating me like this? Why is the environment reacting to me in this way? And these ancient literatures say, well, it's a formula. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in this, a long series, it's a verse with a series to it. And he starts off by saying, whatever you contemplate, then you're going to develop a relationship with. Isn't that amazing? You look at something and then suddenly there's a relationship there because you look at it and maybe it's an inanimate object, but then you think like, oh, yeah, maybe I want that. I'd like to have that somewhere in my house or whatever. And then it becomes a part of your consciousness. And then you have to work hard to get it. And then you get it. And then it means so much to you. And then it can be broken or stolen or whatever happens to it. Then it has an effect on us. So there's this directive given in the Bhagavad Gita. Yoga Sutras say the same thing. Other wisdom literatures, be careful what you look at. I've said this before, but you could test this out when you're driving. In fact, don't do this, just imagine it. But when you're driving, let's say on a popular freeway anywhere, if you happen to look at the person next to you who's driving, not in your car, in the car that's driving next to you, it's actually not allowed. Like if you go like this and you look at them, they're like, what? What did I drive? Something, was there a problem here? Do you have a problem? Are you looking at me? What did you actually do? You just use that little beam that you have that shoots out eyes, it touches the other person, and it means something to them. So these are fundamental defining powers that we have in our life. And the wisdom literatures are just saying, you don't need that much to readjust your life. You just need an awareness of who you are, what kind of power you have, and where you're using it or misusing it. And once you realign it and you very deliberately use your attention and point it in a certain direction, it'll have a noticeable effect. Okay, let's see if there's any other reflections. Ooh, one just came in from Manu.
I thought,
Oh, it was a direct message to me. Okay. It was just a direct message. Oh, just saying why somebody's not on camera right now, because they're taking care of a sick child. I'm sorry to hear that she's not feeling well and hope she feels better soon. Okay. Well, that was a very attentive thing to do and very thoughtful. It was thoughtful. Okay, let's see, JM. Any other reflections?
Laksh just sent, have you noticed the phenomena where people may feel they are being looked at, they may even turn around?
Yeah, I've heard of that. And I've heard of it, yes. And I've thought about it. I've never really experimented with it. I mean, I had a friend who was obsessed with that idea that if he looked at somebody long enough that they would turn around. But I never did a double-blind study with that person to see if they could actually do it consistently.
Visam says he...
Oh, Wisam tried it. Okay.
And he says it works.
Fantastic. Okay.
Okay. We have Yan, please go ahead.
Well, I have tried with my dogs that they're sleeping or kind of just laying there quietly, and I don't have to call them. I just have to stare at them. And then they'll look at me kind of like, oh, what do you want?
Well, there's a Yan Yan, there's a verse in these ancient wisdom literatures that talks about how turtles, it's mentioning this power that you're talking about of meditation or thinking of someone else. And it mentions how turtles raise their young by meditating on them. Fish also, when they have offspring, they just look at them because they don't have any hands. They're not going to pick them up. And turtles also, they lay their eggs in the sand, and then they go back in the ocean, and then they just think of them. So it's a inducement in that ancient verse that gives these instances that we also have such power to, when we place our attention somewhere, it has an effect. We extend our energy in that way. Okay, Jam, let's see another. We have Kennedy.
Yeah, Kennedy just posted, a friend of mine was traveling and took photos with some locals in it. Most of the photos had these folks looking at the camera.
So can you give the purport to that, Kennedy?
Yeah, a friend of mine was traveling, and she was actually traveling through India, and she was taking photos of some of the architecture of the, just the scenery that they were passing while they were driving through areas. And without people being prompted, they would immediately turn and look at the camera anytime it was pointed at them. They just knew. So we're going through the photos, and I was like, oh, these people, it's so nice that they would look and smile. She goes, I didn't ask them to.
Right. Yeah, it shows the effect that your attention touches someone, they react to it, and it's uncanny if you really think about it, because we didn't quote unquote physically touch them, but there is something. I mean, what is the beam that's coming out from our eyes? It's not electricity, it's not LED light. There's something else that's coming out from the soul, from the conscious being, its consciousness, and we're able to touch others with our conscious attention that we place on them, even if it's unconscious.
And then Laksh just posted, I believe in Vedantic literature, the way perception works is defined as the mind going out and touching the object of the attention.
Nice, Laksh. Much to the point. Much to the point. Look at a couple more slides, JM, and see if it goes in any other direction. So, at the risk of stating the obvious here, because it's a simple principle, your undivided attention is the greatest gift you can give someone. There's a little nuance here. When we're thinking about love, where do you start? Oh, I love you. Well, what's the kind of attention you're giving someone? And when you're giving undivided attention, it's a kind of gift. And you can practice this. Maybe when you're talking to someone, you're thinking about how you're going to give a witty answer to what they're saying, or B, you're thinking you wish you were somewhere else. Like, when this person stops talking, I gotta go. Or if you're talking in a crowd, you might be talking to someone and be thinking about someone else in the other part of the room who's waiting for you, in which case you might look down and notice your feet are pointing in a different direction, and you're kind of glancing back and forth. And you may notice also that people will sometimes say to you, oh, you got to go, right? And you're like, how did you know? Because you diverted your attention. However, if you try as an experiment, put everything else on hold when you're talking to someone, and just completely absorb yourself in what they're saying and listen to it. And I'll talk about that in a second, about listening. And you'll notice that the relationship in that moment changes. And partly it's because you feel resolved that you're going to be there and not somewhere else. It's really painful to try to be somewhere else at the same time. I'm not saying that sometimes we have a situation where you're talking to someone and you really have to go, in which case you can politely state the fact and then say, like, I have like 1 more minute or something, then you can give your full attention. But I'm saying that it is consequential how much we give attention. And if we give half attention, it is strenuous, because it's hard to be in 2 places at one time. And if you're thinking about someone else, or some other place you have to be while you're talking to someone, it'll be hard on you. And it's also not as nourishing to the person. So as an experiment, try giving this gift of your attention, and you can consider it that this is the greatest gift I have to give. Any other thing you give is only an expression of how much attention you're giving them. For instance, we recognize people on a particular date, their birthday or something like that, and you say, oh, let me give you something. But if it's given without much attention, then what do people feel? Have you ever been given something that you thought, well, they didn't really care. They're doing it only out of obligation. Not much attention went into it. My sister, who passed, she was the most thoughtful gift giver I've ever seen. She would think, I don't know how she did this, but whenever she gave gifts, like around a holiday time, she'd always think of the perfect thing for everybody. It must have taken a lot of thought, or she had some kind of special IQ for that. And then she'd always wrap it so carefully, uniquely, herself. And it was uncanny what a difference that made. There's also circumstances where you can tell someone didn't put much thought into it. So even when it's a physical object being passed on, you can notice how much attention went into it. It was undivided. It becomes a greater kind of gift. So basically what we're giving, even if it's a physical object, is our attention. How much attention did we put to it? So think of it as a gift. And I think I went into this a little bit, but I think the cell phone is a noticeable, I see Manisha's putting up a laughing emoji because it was what he was talking about, how his young child notices it and tries to ditch that phone somewhere. And if you've ever been with somebody that you care about and they're looking at their phone at the same time that you're talking to them, I mean, look at this picture. That kind of expression that the woman has is indicative of the feeling that, oh, that person's attention is absorbed down a rabbit hole and I don't count. I'm not important. So let's ask a question before we move to this one. And that is, what are the ways you've noticed that people aren't giving you their full attention? Have you ever noticed it? Are there instances? Is it a phone, a watch? We heard affinity.
I remember this time when I was there, my parents were not under, but instead of inquiring, they just go, oh, okay, that's nice.
And how did you feel? You're still remembering it.
Well, I remember in that particular incident, they were so distracted that I ended up kind of continuing it by saying, I'm going to go get a tattoo. And they were just like,
That's funny. Yeah. These things stick also. We can remember the times when we didn't get a full attention. Anybody else have any noticeable exchanges when you didn't get full attention from somebody?
After some time with the years of marriage, when that meant was attention paid or not. Even the, you say, and you would know right away then and it did not either listen, or if he listened, you would have conversation if somebody listened, and versus you just noted and then I think you know each other. Even I think in workplace also, like, you have that, like, you would know if somebody listened or you didn't understand, just by their reply or not reply.
Yes. Nirali, such a good point. In long-term relationships, there can be a way that it just becomes so rote that, okay, we're past this or that. I've noted this as one of the ways to change, even if it's a long-term relationship. Reminded me of, when you were saying that, of an incident that happened to me that I wrote in my notebook when I was in the airport in Toronto a few years ago, and the bags didn't come in. And so I went over to that little kiosk where they're supposed to look for them and see what happened. So there were several workers there behind the desk, and there was nobody else in line, but they were working on something. And I went and stood in line. I was the only person there, and nobody looked at me.
Wow. Yeah.
And I felt the power of ignorance, which is also known as ignorance. When somebody ignores you, there's a palpable feeling of a sort of darkness that comes in. And this is one of the philosophical points that comes out in the ancient wisdom literatures, that the whole world and the heavy feeling we get here is based on ignorance or ignorance. We're ignoring ourselves, we're ignoring others. And you get that experience, right?
Yeah.
When somebody doesn't pay you due attention. And of course, as a customer, a lot of times there's this high expectation that, oh yeah, they're going to love me because I have some status here on this airline. They should be looking at me right now, but they're not. And you just feel like, oh no, I'm a non-entity. I don't exist anymore. It's very painful, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it too. It's just, once you get in return, you realize what you need to work on as well. We take it granted, or we are occupied, I would say preoccupied of what you want to do now or next, right? It's unknowingly, I would think, sometimes happen.
And it's a nice phrase to analyze, preoccupied. What are we absorbed in? That's what's going to be, that's the determinant of where we're going. Okay, Vicky. I'm assuming I could tell by the expression that you were the one that had something.
Actually, we both have a reflection.
Oh, you both have one. Okay, good. Please go ahead.
We can take a 2-in-1.
Yes.
So I have 2 reflections. One, on the previous question, and not paying attention, is sometimes people talk to me and I inadvertently tune out, and then I have to ask them to repeat themselves. And I don't even notice when it happens, and I feel really bad, and it makes me want to be wary of when I decide to engage my attention so that I'm engaging it mindfully, because it has a lot of responsibility behind it. And sometimes I think that I make that mistake because I overestimate my ability to pay attention, and it does have a lot of power. So I should treat it with a huge responsibility. And then for the second question, what I noticed is when I'm talking with just anyone, and I don't know them very well, if they don't pay attention, then I give them the benefit of the doubt, and I think that's okay. They'll probably get the information from another conversation. But when it's an intimate relationship, like family or long-term relationship, significant other, then I start to do that thing we talked about in the first session, where I try to guess why they did it and assign motive and reason and assumptions, and there's sort of like a deeper feeling and hurt will come up. And I just think that part of cultivating respect and humility is for me to not do that on my part, if I can try to give other people the benefit of the doubt, and if I know that I make that mistake myself too.
Wow, that's some really nice nuance. Not only that, it brought us back to the title of the program. You saved us, about humility. And just being able to not make an assumption why somebody didn't give attention and so forth. But I really liked how you mentioned how there's a difference in how we interpret the way people give or don't give attention according to the context and how well we know people and so forth. And I loved your point about giving people the benefit of the doubt and seeing that they'll pick it up elsewhere. That's a really nice point in and of itself. Thank you.
I guess I have one. Thank you.
Yes, please.
And also, I want to add, I like the slides. The slides of the last couple of weeks have been very interesting. Let's see, like those pictures. Some of them are really trippy, and I enjoy them. But I remember when you had mentioned your sister being a great gift giver. It reminded me of a time in high school. We were doing Emersonian gift giving. So an Emersonian gift is a little bit. It's something that you don't spend money on. It's something that you make yourself. It's something that has a little bit of you and a little bit of the recipient in it. And in order to do Emersonian gift giving, we had to each get together with the other person and talk a little bit. And the person that I was paired up with, I wouldn't hang out with him. I wouldn't necessarily. We didn't have a lot in common. I was into boxing. I had my amateur boxing card at that time. And he was an excellent student, and he was really into metal, like crafting and stuff like that, chemistry. And so when it came time to give the gifts, I received this really nice, it was crafted. It was a boxer with gold gloves, and it was shaped out of metal, and it wasn't, anything really, really expensive. And I still have it. I mean, I crafted my storage room into a little library, like the caves, and I have it right in there with my books and everything. And I still remember his name, Herschel Patel. I'm sure he's out doing big things. And I was like, oh, that was so nice. I love that gift. I always look at it, but then the other side of the coin is like, I have no idea what I did for whoever. I was paired up with somebody else, and I just, through. So it just kind of like, reflecting on my own, maybe mishap, or not just giving my attention. I received something nice, but I didn't return the favor either. So this is a flashback.
Really nice anecdotal points, because they're so far reaching, aren't they? Just knowing how meaningful that was to you, that he did that, and realizing the effect we're having on other people. We may not know when we walk away or they walk away what kind of effect we had on them. But that's part of consciousness or conscious living, is to be very much aware that everything we do has an effect, and everywhere we place our consciousness has an effect. And if we withhold it, it has an effect. And if we give it wholeheartedly, we may think, oh, they didn't get it. But then later we find out, 20 years later, they say, remember what you did for me? What did I do for you? You paid attention to me. It's the greatest gift. Oh, look, we got Wisam.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, usually I don't have the right mic. Okay, yeah, in this aspect, actually, I remember the people who have attention deficit, those people are suffering in that aspect because they try their best, but they come along as like, you're not paying attention, especially online where the cameras are not really given the proper perspective. So I feel for those guys, I don't know how these people really pass their life.
I think we can all relate to that to some degree. Obviously, there's, a pathology to it, but there may be a sense of feeling chronically distracted that's very disturbing, actually, because so many distractions in life. And if one happens to get addicted, nowadays, screen addiction, for instance, is such a prevalent point, and people who know better maybe get involved in looking at a screen and then feel, oh boy, why 5 minutes or 5 hours or 5 days or whatever, and just feel really empty. And it also, I love that you brought in this perspective. What does it do for us where we place our attention? It can be fulfilling, or it can feel like eating empty calories. You went on a diet of eating Cheetos for 2 weeks, and that's all you had, Cheetos and I don't know, Fanta. How would you feel after that? About the same way you would if you just let yourself be distracted for a couple of weeks. Thanks, Wisam. Fantastic. JM, let's see if we got a couple more slides. Our attention is our only true asset. So I'm going out on a limb here and making the statement. And we're consciousness. We are conscious. What do we actually have? Anything we have that we may consider an asset may be here today, gone tomorrow. However, the strength of mind to point our attention in a particular way, that's an edifying aspect of our life. And it is also, our attention is an extension of who we are. We're conscious beings. We're able to extend ourselves through our attention, and our attention has great power. And I don't know how you feel about this. I use the word only. So our attention is our only true asset. Does anybody have a visceral reaction to that and say, hey, wait a minute, hold on. This program is getting a little tilted towards some kind of absolutism or fanaticism. Your only true asset is attention. How does that make you feel? Yes, Kennedy, please go ahead.
Well, I think a point that really resonates with me because, you know, in the material world, there's a for our attention. When I've worked in marketing, it's about people to stay on this page. How can we get people to take a picture with our product, to show use with it? Like, how can we get people addicted to this? Whether it's food, an application, clothing, something like that. Even in our relationships, it's, I want this person to spend time with me. I want this person to find me to be this. I want to spend time with this person. Like, it's where we put our focus is absolutely the only thing that we really have control over. And so because it's our only really sense of control, I can't choose what happens tomorrow. I can make a plan, but, you know, I might want to fly a kite, but then there's no wind. So, you know, the only thing I can focus on is what I can focus on. And so what I give my time and energy to really is the only asset that we have.
Oh, thanks, Kennedy. That was some pretty strong support for the thesis. Don't think I didn't appreciate it. Wow, great. All right, let's see what other concepts we have here. So here's my mantra. I learned this years ago and I use it all the time. It's a way to bring myself back to focus, back to where I'm placing my attention, because obviously we're self-interested. It's our nature. We have an id. We are somebody. We care about where we end up ultimately when we're not in the complete mode of ignorance. And when we consider the fact that our asset is our attention, and where our attention goes, our energy flows. It's such an algebraic almost expression that it's so redirecting or refocusing to say this or remember it. Where do I want to go? Do you want to go down a rabbit hole? Do you want to empty calories? Do you want to be on a diet of Cheetos? Do they still make those? When I was a kid, Cheetos. Is that like the worst food, worst junk food there is? There's some other stuff. It could be worse. All right. So whatever's the worst junk food, I'll say Cheetos and Fanta, orange Fanta. And so that's, is that where I want to go? And what's the result of that? You'll end up with diabetes or some kind of, you could go crazy eating junk food. So we can also go crazy too, letting our attention go anywhere into the junk zone. So we can remember this with great profit. And that is, I have a superpower of all superpowers. I'm a conscious being. I can decide where I'm going to point my attention. And if I practice that again and again, that's what meditation is. It's coming back to this point. Where do I want to point my attention? Am I going to be deliberate about it? Or am I going to let it just go out anywhere and be have a randomness to it that's going to bring me into a scatterbrained condition? So you can remember this. Even if you want to get a tattoo, it's okay. Where attention goes, energy flows. You can maybe put it in Latin though, so everyone thinks it's more sophisticated. Yeah.
I have a problem with this.
Yes, please, Nirali. Let's have the counter to that.
So I think when I think I don't want to pay attention to this particular thought, it goes there. Or like I'm not sure how to ignore it sometimes.
Now, are you saying that sometimes you don't want to think of something, but you end up going
Yeah.
anyway?
Yeah. It's like, okay, I didn't want to think that, but now I'm thinking it.
Well, that's also a thought experiment. Sometimes in the meditation classes, they'll say, don't think of a watermelon. And
Yeah,
if you say that, then you're
exactly.
thinking of the watermelon.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
that doesn't necessarily refute the point. It just sort of supports it, but it has a lot to do with the nature of the mind anyway, because we get impressions in the mind and it's hard to get them out once they're there. It's
Yeah.
another case in point for being careful about where we point our attention. And this is something that comes up in Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Sutras, and other books. And we get what's called samskars. Samskar means we get a latent impression that's printed on our mind, a little mind tattoo.
Yeah.
And it's, even if we don't want to think of it, hey, it's already there. You imprinted it on your mind. It's not so easy to get it out. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. And sometimes
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, good. I wasn't thinking about that point, and I'm like thinking it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like I'm working against my mind.
Well, that's true. And I mean, there's a case for the ways that we can get such strong impressions in our mind for looking in the wrong direction that even our intelligence tells us that's not a good thing to look at. We can't stop doing it. And then it becomes what we call an addiction. And it's so compelling because we've developed that habit of looking at particular things that we know are non-productive out of impulse. However, the good news is there's ways to overwrite that. And that's one of the main points, and we've talked about this before, of mantra meditation, where you very deliberately introduce a higher concept and a vibration, and you keep practicing bringing that into your awareness. And then it has its own spiritual power to overwrite a lot of those lower thought patterns, and it brings us to a higher state of consciousness. JM, there's 2 minutes. Let me see if I can finish the deck. Cultivating higher quality of attention. Yes, Laksh, it's mantra meditation. Here's relationship builders. I love the little picture there, JM. Thank you. Okay, here's a few practical points. Schedule time to talk. It should say one another. That's my fault. Schedule time to talk with I'm sorry. No, it shouldn't. Schedule time to talk with no other distraction. In other words, if you have a significant other, sorry to use that term, but it's the most handy right now. Schedule time to talk. That point we brought up before, I think maybe Nirali brought up about you might live with somebody and then you just like, yeah, we communicated like 20 years ago, maybe. And everything else has been superficial. Schedule specific time to talk to somebody. It's amazing. It's like, wow, why didn't we think of this before? The next is whenever you speak, make eye contact and listen carefully. Just try that. That's homework for everybody. Next time you have a conversation with somebody, make eye contact, listen carefully, and you'll start to notice that maybe I don't do this very much. The third is write down important points the other person is telling you. It really makes an impact. If somebody's telling you something and you pull out your little pad and start writing it down. I suggest a pad and pen because if you pull out your phone, people think you're doing something else, even if you're used to writing with your thumbs on your phone. The last one is after you listen, restate what the person told you to make sure you understand. And that's a nice practice to bring it back to really paying attention to the other person. These are all homework assignments. If you'd like to try them, they really do make a difference. And finally, going to the realm of meditation and this reconnection with our original divine source, our relationship with our source is also personal. This is the verdict of the ancient wisdom literatures. We have a personal relationship with our original source. Take time to make contact by giving your undivided attention to your spiritual practice. It's the most fulfilling thing. So this is, it comes out in meditation and prayer and reading deeply from the wisdom literatures. And if you give your attention there, you'll feel personal reciprocation. And it's simple, but 1 o'clock, I can't put it happened. Thanks for helping to keep us going. Reese is giving you a big hand. JN is giving you a pranam, a little namaste there. Getting a lot of smiles from all the boxes. Jean, thank you very much. Chandu, thank you. Yan Yan, fantastic. Teresa. Yeah, everyone. Nirali, Chandu, thank you, everybody. So I have personal experience of this principle in a place we might not think of very frequently. And it's high in the mountains in a place called the Himalayas, where these yogis, although they spend a lot of time by themselves, when they come out of their caves, foraging, looking for some fruits and roots to take back in there, every once in a while, they'll see a fellow yogi up on the high peaks. They give their full attention to that person. And there's a ritual through which they do it. They actually raise their hands high in the air and point their palms at the person. And then they do this call out. It's a Hari Bol, which means to keep the transcendental vibration going. It's meant to encourage the other person, and it sends this jolt of spiritual energy. I think we could do it here on Zoom if we want to try it out. Just put your hands up and everyone say Hari Bol. Everybody, do your homework now. Check in later. Have a great day.